In this video, I'm going to show you 10 Chrome extensions that can help you with your work in Google Tag Manager. All and more coming up right after this. Hey there, and welcome to another video of Measure School, helping you navigate the tools, tech and tactics of today's digital marketing world. My name is Julian, and today we want to take a look at some Chrome extensions that can help you with your work in Google Tag Manager. Now, I've tested 10 extensions here, and they don't include any kind of built-in tools like the preview and debug mode of Google Tag Manager or the Chrome developer tools. Now, they are pretty helpful still, so check out this video if you want to learn more. We also don't cover any kind of validation plugins which are specific to a tool like the Facebook Pixel Helper or the Google Tag Assistant. I purely focus in this video on the extensions that can help you with your work in Google Tag Manager. But I also know that there are plenty more extensions out there and are also new, developed all the time. So let me know in the comments below if I missed anything. And if you want to check out one of these extensions out during the video, then we have all the links in the description below. Now we got lots to cover, so let's dive in. Alright, here in our Google Tag Manager account, let's talk about our extension that we can use within Google Tag Manager. Now the first one is an old extension that saved our lives back in the version 1 days of Google Tag Manager. It's the GTM Code Editor. Now if you activate this and go into a custom HTML tag, we see that we have a syntax highlighting here with this black theme. And this is something that is now built in by default by Google Tag Manager, so you might be familiar with this. But with the extension, you can change the color scheme around and have the same syntax highlighting that you might be used to from offline code editors, such as Brackets or Atom or Sublime Text. So still a very useful extension if you use Google Tag Manager to do a lot of coding inside of these custom HTML or custom JavaScript variables. Let's move on. The next one is an extension that I have actually built, and this makes your life easier when you work with a custom HTML field, just like this one, and you want to access your variables. Now sometimes you need to implement variables just like this with these two curly brackets, and you need to have the exact name of that variable in your head in order to make this all work. So what I found is that I go back and forth between the variables menu pretty often to find my right variable name, copy that, and go back into my custom HTML tag and implement this with the curly brackets right here. Pretty cumbersome. So the extension that I've built is the GTM Variable Inserter. And this will give you the ability to just right click in your custom HTML tag and have your custom variables and built-in variables available from this menu. You can just click and it will be automatically inserted. Okay, next up, some more enhancements with Vinci Tools. Now this is something I need to actually enable here. Go into my Google Tag Manager, reload. And we have this enhanced by Vinci. And in Google Tag Manager, in particular, you get this little button here, so you can block and unblock your Google Tag Manager deployment. You can also now go into the variables and activate all the built-in variables automatically, so turn on all or turn off all. And that is something that is pretty cumbersome if you open up your Google Tag Manager account and need to go through all of these by hand. So lifesaver if you want to turn all your variables on by default within your Google Tag Manager account. The other enhancement is when you go into the preview and debug mode. So we're in here already. Let's go over here and reload this page. You can now see that we have some new icons in our preview and debug console. And also here we can see these little improvements that make our lives easier when we have to identify many different tags through the preview and debug mode. All right, let me turn this off for a second and go to the next extension here. And this is the GTM Injector. So this is the Tag Manager Injector. And this is a great extension that I often use in order to deploy Google Tag Manager on pages that I don't have access to. All you need to do is get your Google Tag Manager ID and then copy that over to your Tag Manager Injector. And here you can put in the ID, then you can choose the domain that you want to deploy this on, even restrict this by regex, and you can also additionally push any kind of data layer values into the data layer, then start this whole experiment, and your tag manager will be injected on the page where your regex is matching up to the configurations in the extension. A very useful extension to inject Google Tag Manager if you don't have access to the website itself. Now this can be particularly useful if you want to prepare Google Tag Manager account for a website that you might get access to later, for demonstrations or just for practice sake, so you can see whether you can pick up an event, for example, via your Google Tag Manager configurations. Alright, next up, an extension that helps us with auto event triggers. Now if you are using any kind of triggers that happen on the link event or the click event on all elements or the form submission, you might be familiar that once you click an element, the website oftentimes forwards you on to the next page, so you can't really inspect what is happening inside of the preview and debug mode. And Simo Ahava has built an extension called the GTM Sonar, and with this you can choose the action that you want to inspect. So for example, here with our link click listener, switch this on, and once you click the element and the auto event trigger picks up the event, then it will stop the browser, so you can go ahead and inspect your variables or the data layer or your tags if they're fired correctly. So very useful in the regards of working with auto event triggers. And certainly an alternative to what I always use is to keep the command key pressed and open this in a new tab, because that sometimes doesn't work. Alright, next up, a tool to build custom JavaScript variables in order to scrape your website. So if you have a piece on your website that you might want to have in a variable, so for example the shop here, you can just simply mark it and then go to the GTM Variable Builder and then click this element, and it will push something into your JavaScript console. So you need to open up your developer tools, and then you can see these values in here. So paste this into the console for testing. So we can copy this, and here down here's the console, so we can just insert this here and press enter, and we see the right value is shown in the variable, so it functions fine. So we can copy the second text here, which is for the use of a custom JavaScript variable. Go into our Google Tag Manager account and then build a new JavaScript variable for our title. And we're going to put this into a custom JavaScript variable and simply implement our text here. Let's save this. Refresh our page. And now we should have that available in our variables menu. Now you need to be careful that this is scraping from the website, so the DOM has to be already built, and the event that you might want to choose is the DOM ready event. And we can now see our custom JavaScript title has pulled out the shop into a variable. Now if you want to use this, I would encourage you to heavily test if your variables are ported over correctly, because this still relies on the right CSS selectors, and I have found that in some cases this doesn't work reliably and you might need to adjust your CSS selection accordingly. So test this out, and you can use this for scraping values from your website. Alright, last but not least, we have some validation plugins that help us look and validate the data layer that is opened up in the background. So one of these tools is the data layer checker, and this basically lets us see what data we have available in the data layer and gives us the object back that is loaded into the data layer, something that you would normally see in the developer tools. But if you don't want to use the developer tools, you can just use this little extension to see your data layer and your values in this little overview pop-up. Next up, we have the Analytics Pro tools. This little plugin helps you to inspect the data layer as well, and it has some advanced options to control the actual layout of this tool. So if we inspect the data layer here, let's save this. It will actually push something into the developer tools and make it a little bit nicer. So if you go to the console of the developer tools, we can now see that our console has some new information in here, a little bit nicer than what we are used to from a simple JavaScript console. We don't have to go through the commands and actually find out what was pushed. We have that all available in this nice overview in the console. Now the Analytics Pro tools can do much more. They can also inject a GTM container. So just like the GTM injector, they can also push data into the data layer and inject additional code to validate this all. So all in all, a package of different functionality in these Analytics Pro tools. Next up, we have the Data Slayer. Now, this is an extension that helps you look at the data layer, again, in a different format than the console. So if you're not a fan of the developer tools and the console, you can open up this tab in the developer tools and it will give you the different data layer values that were loaded into the data layer. And if we do any kind of action here, then we should see more information coming in. And this helps you to look at your data layer in a certain format so you can quickly identify any kind of errors or shortcomings that you might want to implement in the data layer. Last but not least, another tool that has been around for a while, which is Wasp. Now, Wasp actually helps you to do a lot of validation of different tags. So it gives you an overview of what is actually pushed into the data layer as well, but also how tags load, through which scripts they load, and which scripts are working together with other scripts. So for example, our Google Tag Manager code here loads actually other codes inside of our tag deployment. So here we see many different other codes that are going out from this GTM.js. And this is particularly interesting once you want to identify where a tag actually comes from, because maybe you don't see the tag in the actual source code, and then you might want to know, okay, we have Facebook firing, where is this actually implemented? Especially interesting once you find out that there are multiple Google Analytics codes deployed on the website itself, and you might need to figure out where different connections come from. So this tool is definitely a lifesaver in the regard of finding out where a tag comes from. They also give you information about what data is set. So for example, for this Google Analytics collect call here, we see all the different information that is sent over to Google Analytics. Very universal, but obviously there are also other tools out there that I won't mention in this video that help you validate certain aspects of certain tools, such as the Google Tag Assistant, the Facebook Pixel Helper, or the UAT helper from Bing. I wanted to mention Wasp here because it's really useful when it comes to tag deployments via a tag management system, such as Google Tag Manager, because we can actually see which tags are deployed through Tag Manager itself. Alright, so there you have it. These are the 10 extensions that I have found useful and tested. Now there might be more extensions out there. Please let me know in the comments below. And if you want to check out these extensions, then also look at the description where we have them linked up as well. Now, as always, if you like this video, then why not give us a thumbs up, share it to a friend or a colleague, and subscribe to this channel right over there, because we'll bring you new videos every week. Now, my name is Julian. Till next time.